Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good, thank you. Good. Are we having a good conference? It's been a good year. It's been a good, apart from the walking. My feet are killing me, but there we go. My name's Simon Townsend, for those of you that don't know me. I look after marketing in EMEA for IGEL. I've worked in the Citrix space for probably 20 years or more, and I've worked very closely with technologies like AppSense and Red Software and obviously Citrix in the past. I am very privileged to be joined on stage this morning, though, with Roberto. And Roberto comes, as you can see there, from Royal Caribbean Cruises. And we're going to have a, hopefully, informal conversation, right? We've got some slides to talk through, but the main purpose of this is to really share with you what Roberto and what Royal Caribbean Cruises have been up to, and not just how they're using IGEL, but how they're using Citrix, and sort of like how does that Citrix IGEL story come together and what they've been able to achieve. Funnily enough, there was a control-up session running before this one, right? And you're a control-up customer as well,
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah, so there we go. Could have partnered up with them. So Roberto, why don't I hand over to you first of all, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Simon. I am currently an architect with our operational excellence team at RCL. What I do, I help the Windows Technologies team, EUC team come up with solutions for the business. Most of the solutions that I work on, are around virtualization, so server, application, desktop virtualization. I've been doing that for a while now, and yeah. On that note, I've been at Royal for 18 years now, because I get to cruise a lot, so it's been difficult to get away from that. Yeah, I've been coming to Synergy also for about 10 years now, and I'm very glad to be here, actually, presenting.
That's good.
And it's been a good 4 days.
Well, thank you for being here. Where's the best place you've ever been on a cruise? What's the most enjoyable one?
Most enjoyable, I mean, it's honestly most enjoyable is always on the ship, right? Which is something a lot of people don't realize, that the cruising experience is not just about the ports that you go to.
Right.
What we make the experience memorable because of what's on the ship. Right. So like when I try to remember what's the best ship I've been on, I think of all the things I got to do in the ship. So which, by the way, was Freedom of the Seas out of Puerto Rico.
Okay.
That was a lot of fun, in part because of the people. I'm a little biased because I was born there, but yeah, that was.
I've never been on one. Never been on one. I always imagine the rooms that you have to stay in being really, really small, and that would irritate me. Or are they bigger than that?
They are. They are small, but on some ships we have basically the wall-to-wall in screen,
right,
which simulates like a window, right? And then those don't feel that small, right?
Yeah,
so we've done funny things like that. But the thing is not in the room. You're just going there to sleep, right? You just show up to sleep, and then it's all about being out on
and going to the bar. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you could find your cabin, you're good.
So tell us a little bit about Royal Caribbean, because it's not just one organization, is it? It's like an umbrella, and there's sub-organizations underneath. Tell us a little bit about the company. Where are they based as well?
Yeah, so Royal Caribbean Cruises International, we're 5 or 6 major brands, notably, Royal Caribbean, Celebrity Cruises, Azamara, and we recently bought a stake out of Silver Seas. Mm-hmm. So we're based out of the Miami area. We're in downtown Miami. I work out of Miramar, Florida. We have a fleet of about 40 or so ships between the major brands, which essentially are floating data centers from my perspective. And yeah, that's RCL, and which I'll maybe touch on it later. We're not just ships, right? So we have some private islands where we're doing some very interesting things. So we're trying to make sure we make the cruising experience amazing before you get on, right? As you're getting off and afterwards. And
right.
hopefully I could touch on that a little bit later on.
What's the, is this a new office?
Oh yeah, so that's a rendering. So that's our, that's going to be our new HQ campus down on Biscayne Bay in Miami.
Right.
So we're, I think it's scheduled to open in 2020. It's pretty aggressive. It's like 3 or 4 brand new buildings. In the background, you can see the old building, and it's modeled on a ship, right? So there's a lot of cruise feel when you're going around the ship, and there's going to be a lot of cool, innovative stuff there. I might have to start doing the hour-and-a-half drive to work there, because that'll be a much cooler place than where I work at now. Miramar is 30 minutes away with no traffic, an hour and a half. But
how does the business see IT? I mean, what direction do they give you? I suppose, what direction is the business going, and therefore how does that impact IT as well?
Yeah, so the business, wants, like most organizations, they want IT to be more agile and innovative. We've been, kind of a leader as far as innovation when it comes to the technology on the ships.
Right.
So for us, it's pretty easy to kind of spread that same type of mentality in-house, right? And so they're definitely putting a lot of focus and effort on just innovating all the time, not just for guest-facing technology, but also in-house, corporate and crew. We're doing, a lot of new, interesting things there.
Yeah. What was this X-ray vision thing or something that you were talking about? What was that? Was it X-ray vision? Have I got that right?
Well, yeah. So that's one of the technologies that we recently added to the guest experience is using AR, where guests can hold up their phone to a particular area of the ship, and then you can see what happens behind the scenes. So you can see the inner workings of the ship. So you'll see people walking around just holding their phones, like you don't understand why, but that's why. So that's one way that we're innovating on the ships.
Good. Okay. Now, a large part of what you specifically look after and what's relevant for today is these call centers. Tell us a little bit about these call centers.
Yeah. So the cruising experience, by the way, starts with that call, right?
Right.
And even we have online booking and so forth, but most vacations still begin with a call to a call center agent, or we're calling the potential customers or online. So our call center footprint right now, we have 3 major call centers in North America.
Right.
A few remote, smaller ones. Internationally, we partner with, we outsource a portion of that. It's just as large. And then we have several other remote partner strategic call centers where we partner with some travel companies in those markets.
Yeah.
So we're pretty spread out when it comes to a contact center footprint. And I think I have about 7,000 or so users.
Yeah. And what type of applications are you deploying out to them?
Well, I'm not deploying to them, thanks to Citrix, but the essentially is all the above. So we present to them their their desktop, and within there they have the industry-specific CRM, Office applications, all the tools that they need to help the guest book.
Do the job. So obviously we're here at Citrix Synergy, so you're using Citrix, and this is an IGEL session, so you're using IGEL. What did it look like before? How far back do we have to go before the days of Citrix?
Well, before the days of Citrix, it looked very, very traditional IT model where we're deploying a lot to the end stations, fat clients, a lot of on-site infrastructure, even in the smaller of locations. So, for example, on the private islands, we have a container, right, where for a data center, and we have full stack of infrastructure on the remote sites.
Right.
So it was very traditional, and always bandwidth was always a concern as the company was growing. Right, we constantly had to stay on top of the bandwidth requirements and infrastructure footprint and so forth. So that's the way it used to be.
Okay. And then from a Citrix point of view, how did Citrix initially come in?
Yeah, so our first use case in the MetaFrame XP days, if I remember correctly, was for our supply chain department. So their tool, which is very critical for them for getting ordering parts for the ships. It was very cumbersome to install. It required Oracle client,
right.
and a lot of them were very mobile, and so it was an issue managing that application, right? So that was a perfect fit. We centralized it, and we got that on Citrix. That was our first application, and then it then made perfect sense to go into the contact centers because as they were scaling out, right, it was basically the same build for the standard agent. So we threw in the contact centers there at some point where we started virtualizing the apps initially, and then eventually started virtualizing the desktop.
The whole desktop. Yeah. Who remembers MetaFrame XP? What was the? I always used to say self-addressed envelope. S, A, and E, wasn't it? Were they the three? They were the three different. XPS was standard.
Yeah, there was.
Then there was
XPE.
advanced. Then there was enterprise, wasn't there?
Yeah.
They were good days. I like that product. It was good. I'm sure I've still got the CD somewhere.
It's also a little bit of a giveaway on our age, but some people have no idea what.
That's very true. That is very true. So where are you up to? Where are you up to now? What version of Citrix are you running now?
Well, we recently just completed a refresh last year, so we're on Citrix Cloud now.
Okay.
And that's 90% of the environment is on Citrix Cloud. We still have some, older versions out there you just haven't been able to get rid of, but that's where we're at right now. We're a new Citrix Cloud customer.
Very good. Very good. So let's talk about the endpoint. You originally rolled out Citrix for that one application. Then it started to scale out. It started to deploy more applications, but you were still running fat client PCs on the endpoint. Is that right?
That is correct. So for some time, as the organization started growing, I found myself, a small team supporting workstations, right? Because it was essentially just a fat client, and the users would just leverage Citrix to get to their application. So we, over the years, came up with interesting ways of kind of creating a thin client type experience so that we could minimize the issues that the users would have, right? That would affect Citrix. So we've basically used different tools to try to do like a kiosk-like environment. We used to use Zen Client at one point.
Right.
Worked out fairly well, but ultimately, there was always a fat client OS at the endpoint.
Yeah, yeah. And that was what, on XP or 7? And
Beginning XP, but mostly Windows 7 time frame.
Okay, all right, good. So then along came this little company called IGEL.
Yep.
And you deployed what? Software? Hardware?
Thin clients, no. You're not a thin client company.
Not allowed to call it that.
Software defined?
Software defined,
Yeah.
no. Edge operating system. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for some of the reasons that I mentioned, we at one point did attempt and did a couple of POCs with some thin client solutions. Unfortunately, that never ended up being successful. And there's probably a couple hundred of thin clients sitting in a closet somewhere in one of the call centers. So after a couple of years of trying to control the endpoint OS, I was introduced to IGEL through our Citrix partner, Forthright. And I immediately loved it. I knew it was a good fit. I used it on my own for use cases that I had for a couple of months, extending the time frame that I was supposed to return the demo units, which I haven't gotten a bill so far. But so I just had it in the environment, had tested it for a while, and just waiting for the right opportunity to introduce it to the call center.
Right. So to be clear, say it how it is, right? You acquired both software and hardware from IGEL.
Correct.
And that was so those eval units that came out to you would have been different versions of the unit, for instance. Was there anything in particular when you were evaluating IGEL that had to be present from a user experience point of view or a security point of view? I mean, what was it that you were looking for when you were moving from a fat client to arguably a thinner operating system?
Yeah, so the OS. So I needed to be able to manage a growing number of endpoints as easy as possible, right? Because the company has been growing, but unfortunately the IT team around this technology wasn't necessarily growing. So that was very important for me that we would be able to easily manage endpoints, and the UMS management server and the way that I saw that you could have full control over the endpoint and easily manage them. That's what really was a selling point for me. And then for the agents, it's the stability, right? I knew I could bring them stability by introducing the OS to the endpoints.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that you did was also take your existing hardware estate. And to be fair, I think as I look at a lot of our business at the moment, these numbers might surprise you, but 75% of all sales that IGEL now makes is software. It's not hardware, pure software. And that is our operating system going on top of existing hardware and repurposing that hardware so that people can then consume the latest version of Citrix. They can move to Citrix Cloud. They might want to consume another cloud-based workspace. But this was something that you did as well, right? You repurposed your existing hardware.
Yeah, so knowing that I had the options to convert some machines, and I had the option to put in the thin clients, and then we also had the UniPocket, I basically had options and just waiting for an opportunity. And the opportunity that came up was we had aging workstations that were like about 8 to 10 years old, in part because of the level of virtualization we were already done. And they just started, at one of the contact centers, they started just dying out. And with 2-3 months left in the year, it was a little bit of a rush to potentially do the typical procurement of of machines and deploying them, and that's when I realized that it was a perfect use case to see if we could continue extending the lives of the existing machines and maybe put a couple of the physicals on there. So, within maybe 2 weeks, I did a POC, a quick POC, 30 machines. The users were loving it, not because their Citrix experience was any different, but the boot up times went from 5-6 minutes to about a minute boot. So they were ecstatic. Some weren't because that would cut into their coffee time. But so we converted about 450 machines at the contact center that we were looking to do refresh of the machines. We did that in about a month and a half with just the local folks that were on site. So we went from looking at sending people to start imaging machines and deploying new machines to, let me just send you this USB drive and just start converting the machines. And that's what we've mostly done. We've converted a lot of older hardware, and we've extended the life of them.
Good, good. If you've not had chance to get hold of one of those, we've got them down on the booth. They're very easy actually now. As of the latest version, they're incredibly easy to evaluate now. You plug them in, you dual boot. You could dual boot a Chromebook. You could do it on a Mac. You could do it on a PC. Small form comes up. You fill out the form. That activates your license, and then you get to experience the IGEL operating system. That operating system is a Linux-based operating system that we take. So very low in terms of its requirements and its specifications. Secure, because we actually make sure that it is a read-only operating system as well. And as Roberto said, couple that with a management platform that we're going to talk about, and you suddenly end up with something that's very, very easy to manage thousands of devices and endpoints. So while we're on that, let's talk about why IGEL. You mentioned a minute ago, this is a screenshot of our UMS, our management server. You mentioned that was an important part. It always amazes me. I'm like, why would you need to manage a thin endpoint? Why is that important to you?
Because I don't want to manage endpoints, right? I want to make sure that they get to their applications and their desktop in Citrix, right?
Right.
But while there's an endpoint there, I realized that IGEL would allow me to basically create a client type of environment, and keeping the same hardware. And when I went through the UMS server and was able to just on the fly, simulate kind of what we already did today, right? Centrally, without any fancy imaging or scripting or anything of the sort. That's when I realized this is very, very powerful. Right. And we've done some customizations that I wasn't able to do in the past or would have required scripting. And it's basically I could customize the environment depending on the use case, and right. So that to me that was very powerful, and didn't require an EUC team to be involved, and they're very happy also by the way.
I imagine it must help as well at times when you're going through that move from one version of Citrix to another, right? So as you go from an older version of Citrix to a newer version, you might want to roll out a new version of the receiver or the workspace app or whatever it is called these days.
Right.
And you might want to point, if I can use that term, a user who is currently connecting to one Citrix environment to suddenly connect to a different one. And I'm assuming that is where that management all comes into play.
Absolutely. So not just any storefront changes we've done in post IGEL, any NetScaler changes, I can now easily test that in a subset of users across all my sites just by updating the profile. So that's what we do. We just deploy it, a subset of users, right? All from the management. So and then once we're ready to roll out, then I push out a new profile to all the machines. So it's helped us a lot with that. And even for DR scenarios, in the past, we've had like a different URL, worst case scenario that to get into Citrix, we had a different URL that we had to communicate. Now I just create in the profile, we have an icon in the background that if for whatever reason this one doesn't work, they just click on that. And I could change it on the fly within a few minutes, literally across the entire footprint we have on.
Yeah. If you've not seen a demonstration of that, you can go to the booth and see that, or come and see me afterwards. But it's actually quite neat, grouping all of those devices together, and then being able to add profiles, configuration profiles, to those machines, and then choose whether you want to do it, the next time the thing boots, or whether you want to do it in real time. So it's good. This is a slide that I talk to quite a lot, and I think it's probably one of the most important topics of conversation that we have with our customers, and it really does start to make a difference. But when you're talking about developing an operating system as we are, then it needs to have integrations put in place. So, if you take a look at the top left-hand side of that screen, the fact that we can connect to all of those cloud-delivered workspaces, and we're actually expanding that out even further as we go out through the rest of this year, because there's obviously other cloud-delivered workspaces that are coming to market. But the ability that we can connect to old and new versions of Citrix, the fact that we can connect to VMware environments, Amazon workspaces now through the Teradici integration, and a whole host of others. But the other integrations that we've got mean that you can either improve user experience because of perhaps a peripheral or an application that you need to deliver down to the user, or you can further increase the amount of management that you can do. So if I pick some of those out for you, we have a lot of customers who need to have smart card support, fingerprint reader support, so we do a whole host of work with in Privata. Printing continues to be a bit of a challenge in a VDI, desktop as a service type of environment, so we do some work with those guys. We do a lot of work at the moment with Printerlogic, who do cloud serverless printing solution. Those pieces of technology, again, they're built into the operating system. Just this week, we were talking about this before we just came in, but I think it was yesterday, we just announced that we've got control-up support within our operating system as well. So it means that when you go and download the software, or you take one of those keys, the control-up and the Lakeside agent is already built into the operating system. So all you then need to do is literally enable that, and all of a sudden you've got complete visibility from within inside control-up, not just what's going on in the virtual environment, but able to see what's actually going and happening down on the endpoint as well. Any examples you can give us of why this may have been important to you? Some of these integrations were important?
Well, especially in the current state of IT and technology, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of services, a lot of vendors working with each other, and ultimately, what I look for in any solution is agility, right? So we have, we're customers of ControlUp. We've done a little bit of Login VSI, VMware Citrix, right? So I knew that at any point in time, if there's a use case that comes up, I feel like I'm ready to support them, right? So today we're a Avaya shop, right? So I knew there were some options for that, so we're testing that now.
Right.
So we're testing, multiple types of use cases, which require, for us to work with certain vendors.
Yep.
And I haven't come up with a scenario so far that the device didn't support.
Yeah, yeah, okay, good. So the question that I don't want to ask, but what didn't work? What's not good? Nothing's perfect, is it? Nothing's perfect. What challenges did you have when it came to deploying IGEL for the first time, or ongoing challenges that you might have today?
Well, the initial challenge, which isn't an IGEL issue, was the user acceptance when it came to thin clients because of previous history, right?
Right.
So then, in part, I was like, okay, that's no issue, because I decided to convert them, right? I have the options, right? So the one thing that didn't work, and I don't want to say didn't work, but that I have a challenge with, is just the license management.
Right.
As we scale up, right, and there's a lot of turnover in contact centers, right. I've had a little bit of a issue with managing the licenses and releasing them and applying them to new devices, but
right.
There's already been a couple of updates that make me feel like we're headed in the right direction.
In the right direction. Yeah.
Outside of the licensing, there's nothing else I could think of that really hasn't worked.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I can give you some background on that. I mean, IGEL arguably has been in the hardware space since 2001, and historically, the way that you would license hardware or thin clients would be to tie the license to the piece of hardware, and that's how it's been. About 3 years ago, when we started to focus and develop this operating system, and we started to see a change in the business, we made a decision that we were going to completely decouple the hardware away from the software. So now you can buy the software all on its own, but also you've now got the ability to port your licenses significantly easier. So we're working towards it being a more user-based type of license, and therefore, if you do need to change a device, if someone runs off with a UD pocket or whatever they might not return, then at least those licenses can be pulled and they can be then reassigned. So hopefully that helps a little bit. So anybody know this guy? Douglas Brown. So Doug Brown has been working for IGEL probably now 18 months, 2 years, something like that. And he runs our community for us. And he's done a phenomenal job in getting very, very close now to about 2,000 people onto our community. It uses a Slack platform, and we've got people from all over the globe on there talking about end user compute, helping each other out from an IGEL point of view. I didn't know whether you wanted to say anything from how does IGEL support you? How does your partner support you? Does the community help out?
Well, I just bug my SC a lot. He has very little time for it, but he's, early on, we, during the POC phase, for example, I wanted to get it out and working as soon as possible, and we had questions, and he very, very responsive. So I mostly just pick up the phone and call whenever I have to, but as of late, I've been using the community, because the best support you could have is from other peers doing the same thing in their environment, right? Because every place is unique. So I've learned a few things going on there, and just seeing what people are talking about, or I'll just throw out a new scenario. So haven't really had to call support too much. And I found the answer so far to anything that I'm thinking of doing or about to do in the community.
Good, That's very good.
I'm trying to get Doug's number though, see if I could just call him.
We do keep, the other interesting thing on that community is we keep a very close eye on it from a product management point of view. So there's a whole section channel in there around feature requests, and the product managers, the product marketing people, and in fact some of the development team are a part of that channel. So very, very good way of doing that. So I suppose if we were to summarize some of the benefits, some of these benefits come from moving to Citrix, and some of these benefits come from IGEL as well. How would you summarize things?
Well, absolutely, the benefit as far as networking has been clear. Once we started putting IGEL out there, I moved to almost 100% shared desktop model, right? And so now from some of the contact centers, we've reduced bandwidth pretty drastically, right? It's all just Citrix sessions out of the contact center. And definitely hardware costs, because as we have to replace hardware, if we have to replace hardware, the cost of the unit is pretty much close to what it was, or maybe a little bit less, and I'm expecting it to last a much longer than the physical machines, because what's dying on the physical machines is like the moving parts like fans and hard drives and stuff like that. And IT management for sure, because the technicians out in the contact centers, which is minimal, they can now spend a lot of their time just supporting the applications and issues that the users having within their application stack versus the endpoint.
Yeah.
And deployment time is gone down to a minute versus an hour or two of setting up a machine. So we're definitely have slowed down or stopped the need to scale out when it comes to resources, right?
Yeah.
My team, for example, because it never scaled out. So the good thing now is that I could manage all these endpoints, and the same thing for the resources that are locally in those sites.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's, I don't want to get on my soapbox about it, but we do spend, I feel that we do spend, a lot of organizations, particularly those that have not looked at Citrix or cloud delivered workspaces, we spend far too much time on endpoint management. You know, there's all these figures about how, you know, organizations are spending 80 or 85% of their IT budget just keeping the lights on and looking at ways in which we can reduce all of that. But, you know, the fact is a lot of the organizations that I speak to, they really don't know how they're going to address this Windows 10 cadence problem, right? And some of the organizations that I speak to, particularly say in Germany, and some of them are sort of 70, 80,000 seats in size, they can't deploy Windows 10, a version of Windows 10 in that time frame before the next version comes out. And so then you just end up with multiple deployment rings of Windows 10, and hence I think more people are going to consider moving to some form of cloud delivered workspace.
Yeah, no, and that was a challenge for us, is the life cycle of the OS at, you know, distributed footprint. So I ended up with multiple versions of the OS and multiple versions of different applications all spread out. So I've been able to just standardize everyone on either Windows 10 look and feel, because we've gone Server 2016 shared model, and I was the initial deployment of Windows 10 was through Citrix, because we just were able to deploy to 4,000 users in a very short time frame. So yeah, so
it's good, good. So finish. What does the future look like? More cruises.
Well, I can't cruise as much as I used to. I have my little one is not very happy when I travel too much. But I mean, the future as far as the technology is that we're looking at expanding to all kinds of different use cases now, right? Like I said, the business is looking at us to be very innovative, not just guest-facing, so internally in the office. So we're looking at testing out the gateway and potentially having, expanding the remote workforce and work from home and stuff like that.
Okay.
And also the mobility of some of the users. That's always a challenge when you have to manage the endpoint. So I'm testing the UD Pocket also.
Right.
So the future looks like there's going to be a lot of work, but at least from the IGEL perspective so far, it's pretty straightforward for me. I have options.
Yeah. So just to come back to a point there, you mentioned that gateway. So one of the things that, one of the technologies that we've got is this secure gateway. And the secure gateway allows the endpoint to communicate with the backend management over secure HTTPS communication. So by the sounds of it, at the moment, what you've got is you've got a number of different sites in the call centers that have got the endpoints, but you've got dedicated links in between those sites, and so you've got no reason to go over the World Wide Web, if you like, out to the cloud to contact the management center. So your management center contacts these other sites just over these dedicated links. But if those endpoints suddenly shift and you suddenly allow a call center agent to work from home, then they would just have an internet connection, and hence you'd be looking at that gateway technology.
Yeah, and that's why we're looking at the gateway, so that we don't have to either VPN them into the environment or anything of the sort. So just kind of go over the internet.
Okay.
And some of those use cases, it's all about being mobile, right? So I think going over the internet's the direction that I'm seeing that it's going to work. And so far, that having the gateway option seems positive to me. Right?
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, couple of minutes left. Any questions from anybody?
How many devices do you have total?
From an IGEL perspective, I believe we're managing around 2,000 clients right now.
Are most of those converted or hardware?
Most of them have been converted, and then as some of the hardware is dying out, we're now starting to use some of the physical thin clients, and or if there's a requirement to have a more powerful machine at the endpoint. So, but we're mostly converted.
What devices are you using for IGEL? Like UD, I think we have UD 3 and 7.
It's UD2s mostly, and started introducing some UD3s.
There's a new version of the UD2 out. I don't know whether you've seen that. If you go down to the booth, that racing car that's on the booth, that's actually running on the new UD2 device. Significantly smaller form factor, but the specification of it is a lot higher. It's actually encroaching on sort of like the UD3 performance until we bring out a new version of that. So yeah, it's worth really, really good price point and very, very performant. So worth having a look at if that's what you're interested in. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
What are you doing for IoT? I would imagine you have like displays and other things like that on the most that are IoT. Is that integrating Citrix or IGEL?
Currently on the ship, we do leverage Citrix shoreside for some use cases, but satellite connectivity is a challenge. But on the ship, currently, no, I don't have any IGEL devices on the ship or conversions on the ship. And so far, like I said, Citrix, we actually take advantage of the fact that some applications that need to be more real time, they could access it from shore. But so far, nothing on the ship. And there's a lot of IoT going on, and maybe in the future there might be some use cases there.
Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, yes.
Yeah, just one more question. I was wondering if you'd ever use a really smart guy to go out for, say, 5 days, 4 days, down the highway where you
Yep.
I might volunteer.
Yeah. Well, I volunteer a lot for evaluations and projects on the ship, but again, not as much as I used to. But yeah, there's some opportunities there.
Good, good. Right, I've got a couple of things to go through. I think hopefully all of you have got a little yellow ticket, is that right? Yes, Simon. Yeah. Right, I'm going to draw one of these out. That gives you the ability to go down to our booth. You can go into the money machine and get 25 seconds in the money machine. I'm told that people have been winning anywhere between $80 and $120 within. So it's worth a go. Do you want to pick one of those out and see who our winner is? Is there a number?
And the winner is 440126.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect, well done. If you just want to catch up with Kimberly, who's at the back before we go. The other thing that's worth noting, we're all about software-defined endpoints and about how we can obviously update our endpoints with ease. Software-defined, German-engineered. For that reason, we are this year giving away a Porsche Taycan at the end of the year. So everybody's entitled to go into the draw for a Porsche. You can go to www.ichallengeeverything.com, take a short survey, and then you can go into the draw for the Porsche. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you to Roberto for sharing his stories with us. Thank you.